Hello, students. It's almost 3 minutes past 3, so we can start with the lecture schedule for today. I welcome you all to the third lecture uh, which is being conducted today. This is primarily because I want this particular topic to be over today, so that we can start with the new topic in the next session. And I won't be able to take up any of your problems at the time being, for the time being, today that is, because I again have some problems with the headphone. But tomorrow and day after tomorrow, that is on Saturday and Sunday, I will be available for all your queries. Whatsoever queries you might be having, you can ask me, you can call me, or you can message me through WhatsApp, in the WhatsApp, and they will be answered. So, or at least I will try to answer them. But for the time being, let me just start with the topic to be done today. So let me just present the screen to you. So we are basically going to develop the FEM theory now. Most of the steps of the theory have been dealt with in the morning session. So this primarily is going to be a repetition, but there is going to be one difference, that we are going to implement the equations developed in the morning session from the element point of view. We are actually going to divide the domain into a number of elements. We are going to divide the domain in one element, that is the first example, and then we will divide the domain into two elements, and then we will divide the domain into four elements. This is going to illustrate the process of tackling elements. Apart from this, this is also going to tell you how the elements, how the equations of the elements are supposed to be clubbed together to get the solution of the finite element process. Now, apart from this, there is going to be a new concept which we have not done so far, but in fact, the concept was mentioned in the earlier classes today. The concept is, the concept relates the trial function. The trial function which we have been taking so far, obviously it is a polynomial, and it contains some unknown terms such as a1, a2, a3, and so on. But the thing is that the polynomial does not gives the value of the unknown parameter at any specific point, but once the solution is known, we are substitute the value of x in the polynomial itself. The value of x is obviously that location where we are supposed to find the value of the unknown polynomial. So this is how the solution is going to proceed, which basically means that still after finding the value of the polynomial, still after finding the result, that is finding the value of the polynomial, we still have some additional work which has to be done. That is substituting the value of x corresponding to the location where the value of the unknown polynomial is supposed to be found. Unknown parameter is supposed to be found. Now, in the present discussion, we will start with the same polynomial, but we are going to alter it slightly so that the A1 and A2, that are the two unknowns, correspond to the value of the unknown parameter at two locations. We are going to slightly modify the polynomial. We are going to change its form, mathematical form that is, such that the parameter A1 and A2 now represent the value of the unknown parameter at some specified locations. So that also is going to be dealt with. So coming to the actual presentation now. In this session, we will take the entire domain as one element. It will be seen that when the domain is divided into elements, we will construct trial function only within each element and not over the entire domain as was done previously. Therefore, when we are using only one element, the one element becomes identical with the entire domain, and corresponding trial function also covers the entire domain. Consequently, all the solutions in the previous sections can be viewed as one element solution. In the present one element solution, we will again use the polynomial trial solution as was done previously, but the terms will be arranged in a special form. So this special form is a concept which is new to you. Therefore, we are going to cover it not at a rapid pace, but we are going to cover it slightly at a slower pace. So we have a domain which has been divided into a single element. So the entire domain corresponds to one element itself. Now this domain has two locations which have been marked as node number 1 and node number 2. And these two nodes are located at XA and XB respectively, which obviously happen to be the endpoints of the domain. And the value of unknown at these 2 points happen to be UA and UB. Now, as there are 2 nodes in the element, since there are only 2 nodes in the element is known as a linear element, and the unknown is governed by a linear expression given by U is equal to mx plus c, which obviously is an equation of a straight line, because once there are 2 points on a graph and they are supposed to be connected together, so obviously you will draw a straight line between them. So when and a straight line basically is a linear concept. So when there are only two nodes in an element, the element is called a linear element. The expression which relates the unknown parameter in the domain, that is in the element itself, is a linear expression given by mx plus c. Kindly note that the equation has two unknowns, that is m and c, which is equal to number of nodes in the element. The element has two nodes, that is node number 1 and node number 2. Therefore, the equation of the unknown parameter for this element also contains only two unknowns, which is m and c. This linear element has 2 degrees of freedom because at each node there is only one unknown. So at two nodes, the element has two unknowns. So the degree of freedom of this element is going to be 2, which obviously is the simplest case possible. Now in the coming slide, we are going to obtain the value of m and c. So this is the equation from where we start. Y is equal to mx plus c. And substituting the value of xa, we get the equation number 2. That is u1 is equal to mxa plus c, because the value of u at xa happens to be u1. Similarly, for x to be xb, that is the second node, the value of the unknown happens to be u2. So we get equation number 3. So now we have two linear simultaneous equations, that is equation number 2 and 3. These can be solved together to give you the values of m and c. So from 1 and 2, we subtract them. That cancels out the parameter c, giving you the value of m written in equation number 4. Similarly, we can get the value of c, which is given in equation number 5. So once m and c is known, m and c are known, we are going to substitute these values of m and c in equation number 1 itself, which is going to, substituting m and c in u, that is equation number 1, we get this expression as a result. And the next step is to slightly rearrange the terms in a particular form such that u1 and u2 comes out. So the expression is xb minus x divided by xb minus xa into u1 plus x minus xa divided by xb minus xa into u2, which can also be written as equation number 6. U is equal to phi1 u1 plus phi2 u2. Now in this expression number 6, there are two terms. One term is phi1 u1 and the other term is phi2 u2. That is because we had a linear element. The linear element itself had two nodes. So we are getting two terms over here. And U1 corresponds to the value of the unknown at node 1. And U2 corresponds to the value of the unknown at node 2. So this is the expression for phi1 in equation number 7 and expression for phi2 in equation number 8. Also note that both phi1 that both phi1 and phi2 happens to be linear expressions of x. Both phi1 and phi2 contains x. They do not contain nonlinear terms of x. Both of them are linear expressions of x. This is because we did the entire derivation for a linear element in which u was represented as mx plus c. We started with the linear expression. As a result, we got linear expressions for phi1 and phi2. And in this particular element, the unknown parameter u is represented as u1 phi1 plus u2 phi2. And similarly, there is one more thing which I can clarify right now, that if we took a quadratic element means that there are going to be terms of x square. The polynomial is going to be u is equal to mx square plus nx plus c. So there are three terms, mx square plus nx plus c. So there are three terms corresponding to the three nodes in the element. And the three unknowns are the values of m, n, and c. And as we have done in the case of a linear element, we can get the values of m, n, and c if we evaluate the expression. The expression is u is equal to mx square plus nx plus c at three locations that are the locations of the nodes. This is going to give us three linear simultaneous equations which can be solved for the values of m, n, and c. Of course, the expressions of m, n, and c are going to be quadratic expressions. They are going to contain terms of x square. Therefore, they are going to be quadratic equations. And the next step is we substitute the value of m, n, and c back in the quadratic equation and then rearrange the terms so that we have an expression of the type u is equal to u1 phi1 plus u2 phi2 plus u3 phi3. That means there are going to be three terms, u1 phi1 plus u2 phi2 plus u3 phi3. And the expressions for phi1, phi2, and phi3 are going to be quadratic, because in this case we started with a quadratic distribution, quadratic behavior, or a quadratic polynomial, you can say. We end with quadratic expressions for phi1, phi2, and phi3. So that is one development which we are going to do in the future classes. But I have just mentioned it over here because the things are interconnected. So coming to the next slide, u is equal to u1 phi1 plus U2 phi2, and the values and the expressions of phi1 and phi2 are on display. Both of them are linear expressions. By linear expression, it simply means that over the range of the domain, phi1 is going to vary as a straight line when the value of x is varying. That is a linear expression. And similarly, phi2 is also going to behave linearly. These phi's are known as shape function or the interpolation function. The phi's are known as interpolation functions or the shape functions. Note that both are linear and they are functions of x only. They are not functions of x square. They are functions of x only. Now, these shape functions are supposed to satisfy some properties. The two shape functions which we have developed so far, they are supposed to satisfy some properties. And the properties have been given in a tabular form. Phi1, that is the first shape function, has a value of 1 at node 1 for x to be xa. This actually you can substitute in the expression of phi1, which is written on the top. If we substitute xa in place of x in the expression for phi a, the numerator and the denominator become same, and therefore phi1 is 1 at x is equal to xa. That is the first node. Similarly, if in the expression of phi1 you substitute xb in place of x, so in the numerator it is going to be 0. That means the phi1 itself is going to be 0 at x is equal to xb. That is at the second node. So this is what phi1 are the values of phi1. Similarly, you can substitute, you can take up the expression for phi2, and you can come up with the values of phi2 at node 1 and node 2. The value of phi1 of phi2 at xb, that is the second node, is going to be 1, and it is going to be 0 at node number 1. So these are the some of the properties which these two shape functions are supposed to satisfy. And if this thing is clear, then simply by drawing a table of this particular form, this table is known as the truth table. Simply by drawing a truth table of this form, you can derive the expressions for the shape function for any element. If you can, I'm just repeating myself, if you can come up with a table of this particular sort, you can derive the shape functions for any element. The element can be 1 dimension, it can be 2 dimension, or it can be 3 dimension also. Apart from this, it can be linear, it can be quadratic, it can be cubic also. Any type of element in any dimensions. If this particular table can be constructed, then you can derive the expressions for the shape function of any element. So this table is going to reduce your mathematical work to a large extent possible. And This becomes important because in the entire theory of finite element, construction of the shape function is one single thing which is going to have a maximum influence on your solution. In the entire affine theory, shape functions happens to be the only thing, most important thing, which is going to influence your solutions. And all the work which is being going on, most of the work which is going on in the theory of RPN is on the construction of a shape function itself. So this really happens to be an important topic. Now, coming to the next slide. Now here we are going to plot the shape functions over the domain of the element. So we have a truth table. This is the variation of phi1 over the element. So the value of phi1 is 1 at the first node, that is xa, and it is 0 at the second node. Since phi1 is a linear expression, obviously these 2 points are going to be joined by a straight line. And then similarly, we have the variation of phi2, that is the second shape function. It has a value 1 at node number 2 and has a value 0 at the node number 1. And between these 2 nodes, the variation happens to be linear. So this is how the 2 shape functions are going to vary. Shape function number 1, phi1, is associated with node number 1. Shape function number 2, phi2, is associated with node number 2. Similarly, if we had a 3-noded element, 3-noded element is going to be a quadratic element. We are going to have another shape function, phi3, which is going to be associated with node number 3, and so on. Note that the value of shape function is 1 at its own node and 0 at the other. This is one thing which we have already discussed. Now we are going to discuss some of the tricks which can be used to develop the expression for shape functions for any element. Now we are going to discuss some of the tricks which can be used to develop the mathematical expression for any shape function. And currently this is being demonstrated for a linear element. So starting with shape function number 1, that is phi1. So phi1 is supposed to be 0 at x is equal to xb. So obviously expressions such as x minus xb is going to give you 0 when x becomes xb. So phi1 is x minus xb. But the thing is that when you evaluate this particular expression at xa, phi1 becomes xa minus xb, which is not 1, but it was supposed to attain a value 1. So what you do is a simple mathematical trick. You simply divide this by xa minus xp. So we have the expression of phi1, which obviously has a value 1 at xb, and it has a value 0 at नहीं मैंने गलत बोल दिया. It has a value 1 at xa, and it has a value 0 at xb. Now we are going to repeat this particular step to get the expression for phi2. So since phi2 is supposed to be 0 at xa, therefore we get our expression phi2 is equal to x minus xa. In this particular slide, ये एक notation n आ गया है. It should be phi in place of n. So the expression for phi2 becomes x minus xa, because phi2 is supposed to be 0 at xa. Now in the next step, we evaluate phi2 at xb. That gives us xb minus xa, which is not 1. Therefore, we divide the expression by xb minus xa to give you the resulting expression of phi2. So this is how we end up with the functions, with the expressions for phi1 and phi2. These are obviously some very easy mathematical tricks, which are very easy. There is no need for them to be to discuss them again and again. So we continue with the rest of the discussion. These are expressions of phi1 and phi2. Now, as the stiffness terms need the derivative of the trial function, we take the derivatives of the shape functions also. This gives the expressions for the differentials of phi1 and phi2. d phi1 by dx is equal to minus 1 by xb minus xa, and d phi2 by dx is equal to 1 minus xb divided by xa. We are taking the differentials of shape functions because the stiffness matrix itself contains the differentials of the shape functions. Now, substituting the trial functions into the stiffness and the load terms, we get these expressions. Obviously, these expressions have been derived earlier, but they have been placed over here just for the sake of continuity. So we have Kij, Fi, that is given by equation number 2. And in equation number 2, the boundary term, that is the second term in the right of equation number 2, that has been expanded. The equation becomes this thing. For explaining this, we are going to go back to the previous slide. Over here, since we are talking about a linear element, the value of I is going to be 1 and 2, and the value of j is also going to be 1 and 2. So by keeping different values of I and j in equation number 1, we get the 4 terms of the stiffness matrix, because stiffness matrix, it is a square matrix of size 2, because there are 2 unknowns in it. 2 unknowns means that we are going to require 2 equations. So the matrix is going to be a square matrix of size 2 by 2. So the value of I and j. I represents the row number, j represents the column number, and by varying I from 1 to 2 and j from 1 to 2, we can get the 4 values of the stiffness matrix. And similarly, in equation number 3, we keep the value of I to be 1. So that gives us the right hand side of the first equation. And then we keep the value of phi to be 2, which gives us the right hand side of the second equation. And once we do all the manipulations, substitution part, we get these equations. So there are 2 equations. There are 2 unknowns, A1 and A2. And A1 and A2 now represents the value of the unknown parameter at the 2 nodes. A1 and A2 are not coefficients of a polynomial, but they have some additional representation also. They have some additional significance also. They now represent the value of the unknown at the 2 nodes. And as a next step, we are going to substitute the value of XA, that is 1, XB, that is 2, and we are also going to substitute the flux boundary condition, which is appearing in the second term on the right. The second term on the right contains flux to be evaluated at point XA, that is in the first equation, and at a point B in the second equation. And please remember, or please recall, that we have specified the value of flux at the second node, that is at a location XB. So we know its value, which can be directly substituted at this place. That is in the right hand side of equation number 2. So once the equation, the values or the parameter have been substituted, the equation take the form given by equation number 1, and then we substitute the flux value also. The flux was specified to be 1 by 2. So we directly substitute the value 1 by 2 in the right hand side of the second equation. So these are the 2 equations which we get. Please note that in the first equation, there still is an unknown term of flux to be evaluated at x is equal to 1, that is XA. Since this particular term is not known, the 2 expressions, the 2 equations cannot be solved to get the value of A1 and A2. For this, we have to further manipulate these 2 equations corresponding to the first boundary condition, which was specified at node 1 in terms of U. The essential boundary condition U1 is equal to 2 is a constrained boundary condition. As there is no term in which this can be substituted, we must constrain the trial function itself to satisfy the boundary condition. This is the trial function. At x is equal to x1, at x is equal to 1, phi1 is going to be 1. This is one thing which we have discussed in the previous slides. And phi2 is going to be 0, which means thus u1 is 2 itself. And this value of a1 can be used in the second equation. The second equation contains two unknown parameters, a1 and a2, out of which a1 is now known. So we can use the second equation to get the value of a2, which is going to be the parameter on display. So the net result is that now we know both a1 and a2. This is these expression on display. These are simply simplifications. U is given by a1 phi1 plus a2 phi2, out of which we have calculated the value of a1 and a2. The expressions for phi1 and phi2 are already known to you. They are substituted to give equation number 2. And equation number 3 is simply a simplification of equation number 2. And equation number 3 can be differentiated to get an equation for flux, that is equation number 4. ये गलत लिखा हुआ है, यहाँ पे x नहीं आना चाहिए. Tau should simply be 0.591 and not 0.591x. So in the next class tomorrow, we are going to extend the theory which has been developed just now into 2 elements and 4 elements. So kindly revise this particular topic which we have done today. This is going to be extended to 2 element and 4 element solution. And after these 2 solutions have been achieved, I'm not going to take any new lecture for 2 or 3 days maybe. Those 2 or 3 days are going to be for your revision purpose. Go through the topics which we have done so far in the finite element method and which we are going to do tomorrow also. And then once all your queries have been answered, we are going to take up the next topic from Wednesday onwards. So basically you have 3 days in between. Tomorrow we are going to cover up the 2 element and the 4 element solution. On Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, there won't be any lecture. These 3 days are for your preparation, or maybe you can go through the topics which we have done so far. And we are going to take a new lecture, which basically is going to be the programming of what we have done so far from Wednesday onwards. Okay then, thank you. Have a nice day.